Hi, my name is Natekokernot, and I want to welcome you to my channel. I've been looking at the work of authors William Strauss and Neil Howe recently, and the extensive research they did to flesh out their theory that history might indeed be cyclical. This would mean that the news isn't so new after all, because there are clear patterns being repeated again and again. One of the premises of A Course in Miracles is that each individual is constructing their own experience. So my experience is my own creation or my own projection, and all of my creations are ultimately for my benefit. The hidden benefit of those experiences that we would call negative are, of course, the lessons hidden within them. Lessons that we are teaching ourselves, and we sometimes have to repeat the same lessons over and over again until we understand exactly what they are there to teach us. I don't know about you, but when I look back on my life these days, I often feel most grateful for the hardest lessons I have received. The most difficult times that I've gone through have taught me the most and led to the most spiritual growth. Contrasting those with the times when I was coasting through life and I wasn't learning much of anything, I do feel more genuine, deeper gratitude for the tougher chapters. One effect of reframing our struggles in this way is that we start giving attention to our struggles in a more opportunistic and optimistic way, rather than with the victim mentality that would only lead to more experiences of victimhood. The idea that I'm at the mercy of the world becomes harder and harder to believe, and along with that hopelessness and despondency are vanishing emotions in my experiencing, at least. When I finished up my ministry training with the Circle of Atonement this past spring, I was quite enthusiastic about learning how to open myself up to direct guidance from the Holy Spirit. And I set out on a 40-day project of praying every hour for guidance. Many ACIM students do hear thoughts in their heads that don't seem to be coming from the familiar voice of their egos, and I was interested in opening this channel for myself. It didn't exactly work that way for me, but one thing that did drop down that surprised me was suddenly a very keen interest in astrology. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. One thing the astrologers all seem to agree about is this idea that history is indeed cyclical. They are all predicting huge shifts in the world right now. We are in a particularly dynamic period in the cosmos right at this very moment. And as I'm learning the meaning of the different planets, the various zodiac signs, and the relationships between the planets and the zodiac signs, as well as the meaning of different aspects or angles that are coming into being with the transits of the various planets in relationship to their positions in my natal birth chart and with each other, I've come to understand certain traits that I have in a new light since I've been diving down this rabbit hole. For instance, I've always known that Aries was my sun sign, and I've always understood that Aries are prone to stubbornness and resisting being controlled by others. But there was another side of myself, my compassionate and empathetic side, the side of myself that inspired me to go back to school in my 40s to become a therapist, that I couldn't explain until I understood what my ascending sign was. It's Cancer, by the way. I've learned that Cancer is associated with a nurturing energy, and this helped me to understand why this particular Aries wants to support other people through their emotional struggles. Many astrologers actually think we should be looking at our horoscopes more from the vantage point of our ascending signs than our sun signs, but you do have to know the exact time of your birth to know your ascending sign. Astrology has been treated more like a science by those who are passionate about it. It's not, as of yet, a way of predicting the exact events that will transpire, but it is good at predicting the sorts of events that might happen, and then after they've happened, it seems fairly simple for advanced astrologers to find an explanation for the events that have transpired by looking at the birth charts of the individuals or the countries involved. Another thing I've learned about astrology is that the outer planets, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, which move through the zodiac much more slowly than the inner planets, are all much more related to the collective experience of humanity than the inner planets like Mercury, Venus, Mars, and Jupiter. I've also learned that it's a big deal when a planet is hanging out near the cusp of two signs, and it's also significant when a planet goes into retrograde, meaning that it appears to be going backwards through the zodiac from the vantage point of Earth. So it's no surprise that right now, at what I think most of us could agree, is the most turbulent and uncertain period in general in any of our lifetimes, that all four planets are in retrograde, and all four of them are right on the cusps of new signs. Because they are all moving so slowly through the sky, Pluto, for instance, can stay in one sign for anywhere from 10 to 30 years, and Neptune stays in a sign for 14 years on average. Uranus takes approximately 7 years to move through a sign, and Saturn 2.5 years. It's very uncommon, therefore, for all these signs to be arranged at the cusps of their respective signs all at the same time. But that is how the heavens are arranged right now. And they're making some very interesting aspects as well. Aspects are angles, as I said before. A 60-degree angle between two planets is called a sextile, a 90-degree angle a square, and a 120-degree angle is called a trine. When two planets are both in the same degree of the same zodiac sign, they're called conjunct, and when they're across from each other at 180 degrees, they're in opposition. The astrologers have learned over time, by watching the skies as well as the unfolding events, and taking note of the emerging patterns, that squares and oppositions can often mean challenges, while trines and sextiles, which are softer angles, are often beneficial or easier transits to tolerate. There are some planet pairings that seem to thrive when conjunct, and others that don't. Right now, we have Saturn and Neptune hanging out for quite some time in close proximity to one another, and they're at the world point, which is the cusp between Pisces and Aries, the last and first zodiac signs respectively. Saturn represents discipline, responsibility, maturity, structure, limitations, and karma. Saturn has dipped back into Pisces recently, in retrograde, and it will re-enter Aries, where it rested a while during the spring and early summer, in November. Neptune is close by to Aries, and it is also in retrograde, but it is still in Aries. It will briefly dip into Pisces and then back into Aries again. Neptune represents dreams, spirituality, illusion, compassion, and boundless imagination. It's no small event that they are basically conjunct for most of 2025 and 2026, and it's even more significant that they're doing it right around the world point at the beginning of the zodiac. Many astrologers have predicted this period to be one of shifting paradigms from the old rigid structure of Saturn to the more dreamy and spiritual Neptune. I am certainly hopeful that the paradigm shift will involve our collective understanding of perception, as we begin to discern what's real from what's illusion, and furthermore, that our individualistic identities are the illusion. Even in the last few days, I've noticed that new clients I see are suddenly more receptive to the idea that our thoughts we entertain lead to both our emotions and our perceptions of the world. The moment we're having with AI, uncertain of what it portends, and with even greater uncertainty as to whether the images we're seeing on our screens are really happening or if they're just AI generated. That's precisely what the battle or the dance between Saturn and Neptune hanging out so close to each other would cause, according to the expert astrologists that I've listened to. A great deal of collective confusion about what is real and what is illusion. These two planets are going to be precisely conjunct on the 15th of next February, I believe. Many astrologers are bracing themselves for that day because it signifies the resolution of a drama that has been playing out for over a year. I'd also like to look at the cycle of major crisis times that I was talking about in my last video on Howe and Strauss, but this time through the framework of astrology. The roughly 80 to 90 year repeat cycle of extreme conflict that we can see when we look at this moment right now, then World War II, and then the Civil War, and then the American Revolution, and then we do a little simple math. Many astrologers hold Uranus and Gemini responsible for this effect. Uranus represents sudden and unexpected change, rebellion, innovation, originality, and freedom, while Gemini represents duality and opposition, among other things. Uranus comes back around to Gemini approximately every 84 years and spends about 7 years there each time it does. Currently, it is also in retrograde and has dipped back briefly into Taurus, and so it would make sense, and I'm sorry to report it, but it does seem very likely that the period of conflict is still mostly ahead of us, and that it would last until roughly 2032, which, interestingly enough, is when Neil Howe is guessing the current crisis to be resolved, according to his system. Lastly, there's a really interesting kite formation created by all the aspects of these outer planets I've been talking about today. Neptune and Saturn, conjunct at the world point, are the top of the kite. Uranus and Gemini and Pluto and Aquarius, both sextile to that world point, meaning 60 degrees offset in either direction, they form the 2 points of the side of the kite, and the other corner, where the string would be attached, has been represented this summer by a few different planets at various times. I'm speaking of Mars, the Sun, Mercury, and Venus, all of which are taking turns, coming into opposition with the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. Also, all of the inner planets have been changing signs in the last week, with the exception of Jupiter. It's fascinating to see how more dynamic activity in the skies mirrors more dynamic events down here on Earth. Could it really just be a coincidence? Most intuitive people agree that it's not. And most intuitive people agree that what it all implies is that there are forces at work that are much bigger and much more mysterious than the simple facts we think our eyes and ears are reporting to us. There's more going on than meets the eye. Logically, it's easy to conclude, as I have, that if the events that transpire in this world do so at the behest of cosmic forces outside of this realm, then this world we see with our senses might not be the real world after all. It might not be fundamental reality. If that's the case, we might choose not to take it as seriously as we have been. Perhaps life and death at this level of reality aren't ultimately matters of life and death on some bigger stage of reality. These are the questions that many of us are asking now, and it's fascinating that, in my case at least, it's a direct effect of the turbulent, chaotic, tragic, and seemingly surreal collective experiences that we are having, that people like myself are beginning to open their minds to these new possibilities. So once again, I'd like to leave you with the same note of optimism that I left you with in my last video. Spring is coming. Hold on to your chairs and do not let yourself get too attached to the dramas that are unfolding around you. And most importantly, do not give in to fear and hatred. Do not bother with taking sides in any of these issues, because that will just pull you more into the drama and the emotional turbulence that goes with it. What I can promise you is that if you do loosen your attachment to this world being real, you will experience a lot more calm on the emotional level. And what that will do in turn is make you less reactive on the behavioral level, which in turn will likely mean that you will not be contributing to the building chaos so much as you will be to the paradigm shift that is waiting in the wings. Jesus told us that we are in heaven now. Perhaps in the next few years, enough of us will accept that fact to turn this earth into an extension of heaven. And that's my prayer for today. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.